Another update on Project Sparky. It's around 2 o'clock, February 12th. This is the part of the process that my wife was saying was interesting, so maybe I should, be recording these videos. So this is a few drafts of the soul.md document. That's the um, charmingly named system prompt that's used within OpenClaw to define the disposition capabilities guidance for an agent. But in my case, the agent is going to be represented by the robot that's right here on my desk. Um, I really should have some way of putting it in front of the camera more often. So a lot of what's in the system prompt is defining how it should operate within a family context, a household context, and within a context of always being on and always having certain sensors and capabilities. Um, so here we go. Just to point out what's in this document. The beginning is all sorts of guidance here about you're not a smart speaker, you're not a toy, you're not a servant. You're a thinking being. And this is kind of the magic of LLMs to begin with, which is that like you create something that has a certain personality and way of behavior just by declaring that that's what's about to happen with the rest of the text. That's how the first instruction capabilities were created. The first assistant personas were created. It's kind of just pretending that this already exists and then having the completion engine complete it as if it did. And then there's information about the household. That's me, Alexis Gallagher, and I've got my wife and son and daughter mentioned, and that we're going to have voice enrollments, so they're all recognized. Only need to still have my son to this. Then there's information telling the agent that actually you're not just a text bot, you're a step above that. You have a body and senses. And with the OpenClaw system, part of what is really innovative about it, at least I hadn't heard of it before, is that it's a gateway-based architecture. So the agent runs associated with a gateway, but then different nodes can connect to the gateway. So the thing is automatically multi-computer, multi-host. And in particular, I've defined a custom node type that represents the robot body and its capabilities. So it can take pictures with its camera, seeing, and it can perform various physical actions. There's a kind of canned set of gestures that the Pollen Robotics Reach Light already comes with, so I'm working with some of those, not all of them. And then another node is the Mac app that runs on my Mac, and that's what's going to give the robot agent the ability to run commands on my Mac, like run the open command to raise a URL in the browser. So if I say, hey, can you pull up that web page, then it can literally pull up the page for me. Or it could show me a visual image or a diagram if I need something shown visually. And then it's also running directly on the Linux box, which is actually where I do a lot of my work, and there can use tmux in order to see the same thing I'm seeing. And then there's guidance here about the fact that everything you say is going to be out loud because it's going through text to speech, and therefore don't like talk in Markdown as agents tend to do if you don't tell them otherwise. And there's information here around speaker identification, so it knows who's talking. And one of the things which I think is going to be most important, and which I don't really have a solution for yet, I think it's going to be a kind of iterate and refine as you go, is handling of references, or indexicals, as I like pompously to call them, meaning phrases like this, that, here, this thing. One of the taken for granted and powerful features of normal communication is that people who are talking can often point to the same thing. Say, that looks ridiculous. And you know what that is because you're in the same visual space. And I think what will be really important for this little robot here to feel like it's part of the same world as me is if I'm talking about this, it knows what this means. And this could be something on my computer, and then it looks at the computer and can see it. Or this could be something about like my haircut. What do you think of this? And then it should be using its camera to figure that out. So I've got prompt guidance here, which is intended to encourage the agent to use common sense and organically use its tools to understand what I'm referring to. And then I also have information here about conversation awareness. Like agents And conversation bots are usually in this interaction where you launch them and you say something and then they respond, and then when you're done, you shut them off. This isn't that. I want this thing just to always be living here and always on. But that means that it shouldn't think that everyone's talking to it every time it hears sound. So I need to provide some guidance here around, hey, when we start a conversation with you, we're probably going to say, hey, Sparky. But if you just hear people talking, it's probably me on a phone call. It's not that. So don't be a little egomaniac. And then also realize you need to tell it that time passes. Because when I say go to sleep, Sparky, then it doesn't hear anything. It just goes into its little dormant state. And then again, this reinforcement of the fact that you are allowed to have interests. You could say that we're prompting the model to pretend to be a character that has interests. What's the difference? I don't know, very philosophical. But I'm curious to see how this part goes. This is so much fun. Okay, bye-bye.